The hottest of hot topics here on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. I'm Robert. He's Jason. The opening graphic couldn't be more on the nose. The Chicago Fire came out with some hot news yesterday announcing a privately funded stadium in a location right next to downtown. And crazy to think they've had 3 or 4 homes now, and somehow building a brand new stadium is the right way to go.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, let's all, I mean, look, this is a moment sort of politically and even in soccer where maybe we don't always want to give credit to the wealthy people, you know?
Yeah, it does seem against the grain. I was saying we got to pull something about this. Seems too good to be true.
But at the same time, like, if this is really a thing, yeah, I mean, all credit to Joe Mansueto. And again, you have to kind of take it at face value that this is going to be what he says it's going to be, which is a privately funded soccer stadium. Like, that's a major part of this, right? Because we are in this thing where owners are oftentimes leveraging the possibility of leaving town or demanding public subsidies for stadium building. And all of that is icky when we're talking about people who are worth what? Billions of dollars, Rob. Like, it's like you got $1 billion and you don't have a couple $100 million to throw at this thing, or you can't raise it, or you can't find somebody to loan you the cash. Like, come on, what are we talking about, guy? Like,
yeah, that's something that's not talked about that much, is like the fundraising ability that these people have is unreal. Even if they don't go in their own coffers, it doesn't have to be the tax coffer, right? Like, they have the connections and have like $1,000 plate fundraising dinner or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Mansueto puts out this statement that they're going to build this stadium. The plan is to have it open in 2028, if I remember correctly. And a
Yep.
couple things that are remarkable about this for me. One of them is just the way this thing looks in this sketch. Okay, it's just a sketch. It's not even like a rendering. There's no 3D people walking around. There's no guy on a cell phone with a dog. There aren't families that you can identify. It's little dots. This is the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, Rob. This is gorgeous. This is amazing. I like those stadiums, those buildings behind the stadium don't even have detail. And I'm salivating over what this looks like. If it looks even a little bit like this, it is going to be an absolute gem right there on the Chicago River. You're the Chicago geography expert. The location is the other thing, Rob. This is like about as good as it gets location wide. It's unless you're talking about maybe Portland, maybe Seattle, but that's a football stadium, maybe Atlanta, but that's a football stadium. Like, this would be one of the best placed soccer stadiums in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is less a rendering and more of an architect's sketch is what it looks like. And yes, salivating, just the roof all the way around, the size, and just the details that are presented there are really, really, really pretty. But yeah, this location, I mean, to get in an underdeveloped or undeveloped plot of land big enough for a stadium to be downtown adjacent, like kind of in a place where everything meets there in the Southwest loop. And so that would be, there's trains, buses, highways, main just thoroughfares, all in that area. That it, from just at a glance, it looks like an idyllic situation. There was a lot of talk in there's multiple different plans and proposals for a place more north in Lincoln Yards that was just west of like Lincoln Park. But this is just like the southwest corner of kind of just the loop area, like downtown adjacent, but really just at a glance looks like an amazing place to plant this. And it would be, perhaps, if it looks like this when it's built, a crown jewel of American soccer.
Yeah, and that's you said if, right? If is doing a lot of work. We have seen this story before, that a stadium gets conceived, there's a plan to finance it, they maybe even identify the land, perhaps even acquire the land. We get renderings and they're like gorgeous, and there's a roof all the way around, and there's all these amenities and things about it, and maybe even fits into a neighborhood like this. And then what do we get? We get something that approximates that idea, but it's not or either maybe the plan falls apart completely, which has happened in the past, or we get something that is not quite what we were promised. And maybe beggars can't be choosers when it comes to American soccer, Rob. Maybe, I mean, despite the fact that American soccer has now built something like 24, 25, 26 stadiums, maybe we need to be a little bit less greedy because, well, we should never take a stadium of any kind for granted, especially soccer in this country. But as I've always said, soccer teams and the Fire have been around since 98, right? So we don't expect them to go anywhere. They kind of become the furniture, but they've never really felt permanent the way this stadium can make them feel permanent. And I even mean that when they were in Bridgeview, because while that was a soccer specific stadium built for the Fire, built by the Fire for the Fire, I guess, although ownership was always kind of one of those wonky public partnership things. It was out there. It wasn't in it, as much as Chicago's this big area. Chicagoland is a big area. You take something away from sort of the beating heart of the city, the loop and all that stuff, and you move it that far out. People go, oh, whatever. That's the minor league soccer team. They play out there in Bridgeview. They're the Bridgeview Fire. They're not the Chicago Fire. Chicago teams, they play much closer. I mean, or their history goes back so far that you can't say they're not Chicago. So I mean, this is to me, this is the next step for the Fire. They need to play better soccer and make the playoffs and get people excited. But the other part of this, though, I think is worth mentioning is the capacity is supposed to be 22,000. And the way that sketch looks, doesn't look like there's much room for expansion. You put a roof on it, you block it in that way, this is supposed to be the anchor of a new development in that area. You might not be able to expand. 22,000 seems pretty small if you really catch fire, no pun intended, in Chicago.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, to your point of if doing a lot of work, Chicago is one of those cities where construction is a whole world unbeknownst to or unto itself, and who knows what
What do you
roadblocks they're
say?
going to have to
What do you say,
navigate.
Rob? What do you
There's
say?
there's gonna be some roadblocks along the way that they're gonna have to traverse.
You mean you're
But
saying there might be some people involved in construction who require a little extra lubrication? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
I'm suggesting that there might be unforeseen complications in the process, which
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of people involved. It's a big city, all that stuff. But it's curious that it would soccer culture or in Chicago was kind of a bit of a microcosm of the fractured nature of soccer in the whole country because there is a huge Latin population who watches only Liga MX. There's a pocket of people who are specifically for Fire, and then there's all the rest of suburbanites that have to traverse their way across large amounts of space to get to any of these places, whether it be Bridgeview, Soldier Field, or this one. And it'll be interesting to see if it said it was telling in the Mansueto comment that was the headline was this is going to be a stadium for all cultures. I think he in that the quote he recognizes the fact that it is so fractured, and hopefully all those things can marry, because I know a lot of suburbanites didn't want to come to the city, and then a lot of the those crowds were kind of separate people in a way, and then you'd see such sparse crowds at Chicago Fire games, but then any sort of international Gold Cups and stuff like that, and they could fill Soldier Field no problem. So there is a huge soccer audience. Will this be the thing that funnels it all into one outlet for the Chicago area? It would be great. Chicago seems like one of, and New York are like two. You think that they're just like a powder keg ready to explode for these clubs, but it hasn't happened yet. I hope it happens for them because they should be one of the top teams in the country, but very rarely have hit those heights.
Yeah, I mean, there's a degree of difficulty here that makes me, a little bit hesitant to just kind of jump up and down and suggest that this is going to be so, the thing that fixes the Fire or turns them into some sort of phenomenon in Chicago. Like I don't want to go that far because there's so many hoops that they have to jump through. But I do think you can be excited, right? You can be enthusiastic. And what we ask, billionaire or not, what we ask of our club owners is to be ambitious, to show faith that their money will be well spent. And it's tough to spend other people's money. It really is. But in this case, this is exactly what we want. So how can we look at, how can we be too precious about this and like start to undermine it before it's even off the ground? If Mansueto, who has shown a tendency to spend to fix the fire, like it's not like he hasn't gotten the recipe right, but he's been willing to do that, Rob. And I think that this is again, what more could you ask for if you're a Fire fan? What more could you ask for if you're an American soccer fan who thinks that the success of the Chicago Fire is important to the success of Major League Soccer, which is important to the growth of the game in this country, which gets us to where we want to be one day?
And kudos again. I'll double up on the Mansueto positivity. Yeah, he's been burned. He's spent a lot of money on rebrands, moving the team back to Soldier Field, big money on players and coaching staffs that didn't work out. He has already spent, and the fact that he hasn't gotten gun shy and then pulled the money out of it and just like, all right, I'm just gonna run this thing as minimally as possible. He's doubling down, which is wild. And it's a little bit and it's also encouraging just in general, like that there's someone willing to be that persistent to chase the American soccer peak.
Yes, and I would say that the other thing about Mansueto and this news is this wasn't. I'm sure some people around Chicago knew that this was a possibility, and we're aware of the rumblings and things. And you mentioned Lincoln Yards, and that didn't come together, but we kind of knew that things were percolating there, and maybe the Fire were interested in that spot, and then there was a USL team that was supposed to come into the market and maybe launch in something in that spot, which obviously didn't go anywhere. And again, this all kind of speaks to soccer is a real estate play. And even this story kind of feels like soccer is a real estate play. It's not like Joe Mansueto is only going to build a soccer stadium and say, all right, I'm done. He's going to go, how else can we benefit from this? How can I benefit? How can my companies benefit? Things like that. But this did kind of come out of the blue on some level. Like it isn't like we had this whole buildup, like, oh, they might be buying this spot. They might secure this for a soccer. It just kind of like, boom, the letter drops. And then we're all like, oh my God, what's happening? And then with the rendering, oh my God, the sketch. This is the letter you were talking about that he wrote. And he's a Chicago guy. He is interested in turning this team into success to the glory of Chicago. And because he has the money to burn, again, what else could you ask for? Now, I do think that this will put further focus on those places in America that have yet to figure out how to build a soccer stadium. And as I think it was, who was it? Somewhere up in the chat, somebody said Columbus, Chicago building their second stadiums. Obviously, Columbus already built their second stadium. Chicago now could very soon, by 2020, have their second soccer-specific stadium. And yet, up there in New England, they have yet to get one of those buildings done. Like, they haven't yet built a soccer-specific stadium. And I think you could, if you want to be really pedantic and weird about it, you could say, well, Seattle is still not a perfect scenario. Playing on artificial turf in a football stadium, even if they get 30,000, it's not their building, and that's not exactly ideal. And, I don't know that Atlanta's ever going to move because of the shared ownership, but I don't know that, wouldn't it be so much better? And they wouldn't be able to put 70,000 in it probably if they were to build a soccer stadium. But imagine if they had a 50,000 seat soccer stadium in Atlanta just for the team. And I'm a person who, like, from a civic responsibility perspective, be like, that's kind of a waste. You don't want to do that. Build $1 billion stadium for 17 home games and then try to fill up other dates and concerts. It gets real. Again, it gets into that place of like, are we being efficient with our money? But man, as a soccer fan, my mind goes wild.
My two American cities that I have an affinity for and spent time and have family in, Detroit and Chicago. Exciting times, I got to say, for on the soccer front. Both putting, their cards on the table for potentially the biggest landmark or footprint for soccer specifically, especially club soccer in these states. So exciting time on my perspective. But we got a comment from Matt, the Flint Bucks fan. Funny, whenever I see the stadium render or sketch, I expect the stadium to end up looking nothing like it and expect none of the surrounding development to happen. And that comes from being burned. Like the major sports teams in Detroit, just one story of many, especially Little Caesars Arena, where the Red Wings and the Pistons play, they just got forgiven this by the state hundreds of millions of dollars that was going to build low income housing, like in the area adjacent to Little Caesars Arena. Like, let's just build the stadium first, and then we'll get to those developments. And then 5 years later, oh, don't worry about that. So definitely watch out for the fine print on that stuff.
That's the thing, and it's worth mentioning. Andrew saying the White Sox wanted the same spot, but they wanted taxpayer money, and so when the Fire came in and said we'll do it privately, that was the reason that the Fire could beat out the White Sox to that spot. And I do know there are people, Chicago people, who are White Sox fans and Fire fans who are a little conflicted right now because this might not be good for the Chicago White Sox. I mentioned the Revs, who have yet to build a stadium. I will, since we're doing the rendering thing. This is the only rendering I can find for the Everett Stadium that is at least conceived, or there's a concept of building this stadium there. I believe this is on the Mystic River, north of Boston. It's not exactly central. It's by no means the same sort of location as the Fire are looking at. But man, at this point with the Revs, just get something. Just build a goddamn stadium already. Like, I want to just get it done. I mean, pay whatever mobster you have to pay to get that thing constructed.
I mean, how fast did they pop up like the temporary stadium that they're playing in Miami? And what's the kind of the footprint? Surely there's something they could throw up like that.
Yeah, that's a location thing. But if you're not paying rent on the building because it's shared ownership with the Patriots, there's no reason to go put together a temporary stadium. The reason that Inter Miami built that stadium on the former site of Lockhart in Fort Lauderdale, they tore down a soccer stadium to build a soccer stadium. Let's not forget that. Lockhart was not the proper venue, but they had the location because they tore down I remember driving by that stadium before Inter Miami landed, and the grass was 8 feet tall, right? It looked like—
I've seen those Pablo Maurer photos.
Well, and David Beckham did an announcement there when they were intending to take over the site and build their stadium, and you could see that it was, dilapidated and not being used. I don't think there's a spot within the immediate environs of Boston that makes sense that way. So the Revs just have to get this Everett thing across the line. The politics are tough in Boston, but in that area, but they got to get it across the line.
To put a bow on it, exciting times. Chicago Fire, a privately funded stadium coming to the city of Chicago. If you're watching this and if you haven't subscribed, oh, thank you, Alex, super sticker. And everyone that's in here, feel free, stickers, thank yous, memberships, all that. But you can start by hitting subscribe. Subscriber numbers mean a whole lot. Memberships, the next level beyond that. If you want to do something outside of YouTube, you can go to coffee.com/morningkickaround if you want to do a one-time or a repeating one. The other way to get a hold of us is on social media. Excuse me. At Morning Kickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Email morningkickaround@gmail.com. We are a podcast as well, so search for Morning Kickaround on your favorite podcast platform, and feel free to utilize Spotify as they have a fun video feature there.